Hey guys, welcome to Nathan's Car Care. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to be showing you how to fix power mirrors that do not work. Now, unfortunately, I did have to re-record this video, so I've already done the repair on my truck. However, I will talk you through everything, I'll show you everything that I did, and you should be able to easily follow along and do this to yours. This video is going to be mostly geared towards the Ford F-150, just because that's the vehicle I have, but you can take these concepts and should be able to apply them to your vehicle as well. Now for this job, there are a couple tools that you are going to want to make sure you have on hand. Number one, make sure you have a good light source. There's a lot of dark places you're going to have to look in, and a good headlamp or other type of light source is a really good tool to have. I like this one. It's super bright, the batteries last a long time, it's LED. I'll link to it in the description to where you can get one of these. Alright, and then secondly, and perhaps most importantly, you're going to need a good multimeter. I personally really like this one here. It's the Innova 3320. I use this a lot. I use this on a lot of projects. Pretty much anything electrical, I pull this out every time. It's a really nice one because it has nice long leads. These are probably 3-foot leads. It has removable plugs that are fairly standard, so you can, if you want, you can swap them out and get alligator clips on the end and just plug those right in with no problem. This one also has a bunch of different settings on it, which is really nice. It has a bunch of different DC settings for testing different types of batteries. It has an ohm setting. It has a diode tester. And one of the ones I use most often, it has a continuity tester with a audible beep. That's very important. This also has a nice little set of straps on the back so that you can put it on your wrist or strap it to pretty much anything else and still be able to use both hands. Really nice. And also underneath of that, it has a stand. I'll put a link in the description to the Amazon page where you can get one of these. It's a really good one. Definitely something to add to your collection. And then of course you'll need other various tools to disassemble different parts of the vehicle, which will depend completely on which vehicle you have. On the F-150, you'll just need to pry off this armrest, and then the rest can be done by hand. Alright, so the first place you want to check is you want to check the fuses, which on the F-150, passenger side, take that off, and then if you just pull on the bottom of the box, it brings the lid off. So before you go pulling fuses, you do want to check with your owner's manual. It even says it right here on the fuse lid. Owner's manual will give you a map that shows you exactly which fuse does what. I've already done that, and on my 2006 F-150, it's going to be fuse number 3 right here. And if you have the folding towing mirrors and they have automated folding capabilities, then if that part's not working, it could also be fuse 4. If you don't have that, then all you need to do is check fuse number 3. Alright, so here's our fuse. Right here. If you look in there, you can see it is 100% intact. However, you don't want to go just purely off a visual inspection. Now's a good time to go ahead and pull out our multimeter and double check it to make sure that there's not like some hairline fracture in it that we can't see. Alright, so grab your multimeter and turn it over to the continuity. All the way down there at the bottom, you should hear a beep. Let's go and set the stand up so you can see it. Alright, so now, when you're in continuity mode, if you touch the two leads together, you should hear beeping like that. That means there's continuity, that means electricity can flow between the two. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our fuse, take our two leads, and then touch them. And when we touch these, we should get continuity, we should hear the beep. There we go, like that. If at first you get that intermittent beep, 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 that probably means that one of them just isn't touching fully. Try again. If you get a consistent tone, then you're good. So, we know that the fuse is good, so we can go and put that back and go on to the next step. Now, if your truck has power mirrors, power seats and power pedals, then there's also a chance that it could be a wiring issue right inside of here. We have one wire that comes off number 3 fuse, and then it splits right here. One wire goes to the seats, and then the other wire goes to the mirror. So I don't have that on my truck, but I can show you approximately where it's going to be so that you can look for it on yours. If you want to take off this sill board, and be careful with the clips because they do like to pop out when they shouldn't. Alright, and then peel back the weather stripping, take off this panel once again, and then now, being careful not to break the tabs, just pull straight back on this piece. There we go. This is where you can use that trim tool if you have one. Just like that. Alright, so with all those pieces removed, you can now look inside the wires here. You're looking for a orange wire with a green stripe, which I'll put a picture of it up right here. That's the wire you're looking for. There is a wire in here that is green with an orange stripe. You're looking for one that is orange with a green stripe. If you have the electric seats, electric mirrors, and electric pedals, there'll be a splice right in here. And that splice tends to break down. I've seen a couple different people on forums say that they believe Ford used a acidic flux when they were soldering it, which made it break down much more quickly than it should have. If that's the problem, all you have to do is cut back the corroded wire and then splice in a new section of wire, reconnecting those together. I would recommend you solder, but you can use crimp connectors if you prefer. Now, since that's not the problem on my vehicle, I'll go ahead and go on to the third instance of what it could possibly be. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to double check, make sure that the switch is getting power. If it is not getting power, then we know that we have a problem downstream towards the fuse box, and then we can look down in that area. We can isolate this up here so we don't have to remove the door panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to pry this off. You want to be careful, there's 3 tabs in the front and 3 in the back. Just kind of work that under there. If you're concerned about scratches, then you can protect this with a cloth or leverage off your hand instead of this, but this truck's so scratched up, I don't think 2 more is going to make much of a difference. So we pull this off. Okay, so we got this popped off. Now I went ahead and disconnected these just so that you can see this better. You don't have to do that, you can do everything with those still connected. This here is the connector that goes into the switch that controls the mirrors. What I'm going to do is pull that out. And then I'm just going to set this aside. If it was there, you could just let it hang there, it would be okay. Alright, so the wire that's providing the 12 volts to this is this one right here. It's the orange wire with the green stripe. And it goes in this top pin right here. So, if we look at this top pin here, not this one here because that is empty, but it's this one right here. We'll stick a lead of our multimeter into there, and then we're going to ground out the ground lead, and then we'll see if we have 12 volts. Alright, so the leads to this multimeter are a little too thick to fit inside of there and get a good reading. So what you can do, you can either get a piece of wire that's small enough to stick in there, or a paper clip, stick that in there and use that to read off of. Or, if you don't have one of those handy, you can just pry this red connector up. Make sure you don't lose that in the door, that'd be bad. Alright, put that in a safe spot, you don't want to get that damaged, otherwise you have to replace the connector. Alright, so now this can go in there and touch that metal lead. So underneath the dash, there's a couple different places you can put the ground lead on. Directly underneath the steering wheel, there's a little piece of metal that has a hole in it. I'm just going to prop this in there. It gets a plenty good ground connection. If you can't find a place to get a good ground under there, you can pop off this kick panel here, and then there's a ground bolt right there. Alright, so we have our multimeter set to the 12 volt setting. If you have a different type of multimeter, it may not have 12 volts, 9 volts, it may just have a regular, like a DC battery. Set it to that setting, and then we'll touch the red lead to our hot wire. We are getting 12.5 volts, perfectly fine. Now in my case, when I first tested this, before I did the repair, I was getting nothing here, so I knew that I had a problem downstream from this connector. So if you are getting the 12 volts here and it's still not working, then what you need is you need to check the switch itself, see if the switch is bad. Hopefully the switch is just bad and you don't have to replace the motors and the mirrors or something like that. If you do need to get a switch, I have a link down in the description and on my website where you can get one off of Amazon. It's pretty cheap. Alright, so the functionality here is pretty simple. The way to test it is pretty simple. But there's a lot of different pin combinations you do need to check. I'm going to post a chart on the website under the resources tab that'll show you everything. It'll lay it out. Be very clear. It's easy to follow. So basically the pins in here are labeled 1 through 8, and then you just test combinations of those using the continuity setting on your multimeter, and then you just test them while the switch is in different positions, which makes it a little difficult. It might be better if you had somebody to help you so that one person can operate the switch while the other person tests it, unless you have alligator clips or something that can go down in there and hook on those while you test them. So for example, in order to make the left mirror move up, the pins you would need to test over in the left position and down, you would need to put the multimeter probes on pins number 1 and 7, and then again on number 6 and 5. You should get a closed circuit, or it should beep at you whenever you do that. To move it down, again on the left side in the up position, you need to check pins number 1 and 6, and then pins 7 and 5. Again, it should give you a beep when you do that. For left and right, in order to make it move left, then you need to check pins 1 and 4, and then pins 6 and 5. What you're checking for here is that you're checking for the power and the ground. To make it go right, what you do is hold that to the right, and then check pins 1 and 6, and then 4 and 5. And it's the same way for the right side, except the numbers are just slightly different. Again, I do have the diagram on my website. Go check it out there. It's easy to follow along. I know you can do it. It's really simple. If your switch does not check out, then all you have to do is pop in a new switch, which, as I mentioned before, you can get the new switch down at the link in the description. If your switch does pass and you're getting 12 volts to it, then what you need to do is you need to check upstream from the switch. So you need to check the wires that go to the mirror, and then if those are okay, then you also need to check the motor in the mirrors. If you would like me to make a video showing you how to check the motors, see if they're good, then let's see if we can't get this video up to 300 likes, and then I'll make a video on that. Now before we continue here, you do need to make sure you disconnect the battery, because now we could be dealing with live wires and you don't want to cause a short and cause any damage. Alright, so if your fuse is okay and you're not getting power up to the switch, then the next thing that you need to check is actually right here at the door jamb. Behind here is where all the wires run to go into the door, and it's actually quite common after opening and closing a bunch of times, especially on these older vehicles, for a wire inside that tube to get broken. That's what was the case in my circumstance here, and I will go and show you how I fixed that. Alright, so what I did is I very simply pulled the rubber tube out of the door, just like that, pushed it back, and you can already see my repair wire. It's still sticking out a bit. Over time the wires will pull back together and it'll go back in. This was, again, the orange wire with the green stripe. When I pulled this apart, I found that wire and gave it just a very gentle tug, and it came right out. Was not connected to anything on the other side. So what I had to do is I fished this in, held this back. What it is, I actually knocked this side in a bit, stuffed that in there to hold it, got the other wire, found the other end, pulled it out, soldered on this replacement wire, and I put the heat shrink tubing on the connections to make them a little more weather tight, and then I just put it all back together. That was the fix. Once I found that this was the problem, it was actually a really simple fix, just soldering wires. Now, like I said earlier, if you can use crimp connectors, but it'll be a lot more stuff to fit back in the space, so I would really recommend that you try soldering. It's super easy, and it makes for a much better connection, much more weatherproof as well. Then make sure that you do get this seated back in all the way, as this is what is preventing water from flowing inside. Make sure it's properly seated all the way around. And that is what solved it for me. At this point, you can put everything else back together, put the armrest back together. If this fixes your problem, then you are good to go. Alright, so if after checking all these different spots your problem is still there, then most likely it's going to be an issue with the wiring that runs behind the dash. Now, that's a much larger project because you do have to take the entire dash apart, you have to take a bunch of things out. That's probably a bit more than I personally would get into. It would just simply take too long for me to do that, since that's not something I do on a regular basis. So what I would do, if that is the case, I would go ahead and take it to a shop at that point, let them know, I've already checked this, I've already done that, and then that way they already have a head start in the process and they can narrow it down more quickly. Now, these are the most common points for problems to show up. I've never heard of a single instance with there being an issue with the wiring behind the dash, but that is a possibility if all these areas check out. Alright, so if you guys found that video helpful, make sure you like it, share it with your friends, comment down below, and also make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. And while you're subscribing, if you could go and hit that bell icon next to the subscribe button, that way you know you're notified whenever a new video gets posted and you don't miss a single thing. And if you could go and check out my website, nathanscarcare.com, it has a bunch of helpful resources on it. It will have some for this video specifically, and it also has some for some other videos. It's a great site to check out, and I also have the Amazon web store that has all my recommended products and tools on there. So if you would like to check that out, head on over there. It's nathanscarcare.com, and until next time, this is Nathan, signing off.